Now, remember what Jessica was talking about earlier? Going neck deep in stats. Just rambling off, figuring out every little stat to get you the best bang for your buck. You remember that, don't you? We're going to do that again. Because this past Saturday, this was released by a Twitter person, SLWORXP or Swarp. I'm not going to try to pronounce it again. I'll just say SL.
All these stats people have impossible to pronounce names. I mean, you look at JD Lewis Quizix. I mean, you have all this stuff that was TBR show summaries and so forth for Price is Right. Mm-hmm. They're all hard to say, but they're all really useful.
True. But he spent a lot of time on this, and I showed it to you, and we both thought it was very impressive what he did.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
not surprising, but it's impressive.
Yeah.
And that's not to take anything away from it. Because sometimes, sometimes you confirm your HO or your original hypothesis. And that holds true here.
Yep. We have here, and I will post the link on the webpage, wherever this is, or on the YouTube, where I will post this. There's no Just the Strats, ma'am, tonight. That is being postponed for a couple of weeks. So I'll let everybody know that. But the spreadsheet that we're going to talk about here, I'll just read the introduction. It contains analysis of the chaser performances as well as the contestants' performances in international versions of the game show The Chase. It measures nearly all aspects of the show, such as the average winnings, the average scores for both sides, and the frequency of each of the chasers' appearances. The spreadsheet utilizes a full episode list on a separate spreadsheet named the Chase International Episodes List, which we don't have. The goal of this spreadsheet is to simply pinpoint the best chaser in terms of win-loss ratio, speed, accuracy, and so on. While the chasers most likely work together to beat the contestants, they still have a healthy rivalry among each other. It's also said the chaser with the best final chase performance is the chaser that a contestant should fear more. There are hundreds of ways to determine the best chaser on the chase, so this person came up with most of them, and I think he did a great job.
I think so too, certainly. As mentioned, there are a lot of ways to record a given chaser's performance. And what this is interesting is to me is that it's a bunch of raw data. As much as it's given in a bunch of ways, it's not really implied what you can do with this. One of the first things I saw with it is chaser response time. And why chaser response time matters is that if you're in an individual chase. Granted, your brain has to work as fast or faster than the chasers if you do this. But if you're not sure, the thought is that you should immediately press. And a lot of the chasers were within the same time range, about 4 seconds to answer a given question. But if you're going to immediately press, the chaser, I believe it's based upon reaction time. I know in the UK it's 10 seconds. I think in ours it was actually a reaction based. Like once player A answers player B, chaser or player has such amount of time to play. So you want to immediately press and you want to pressure the chaser into an answer if you're not sure. Because if you do that, if you pressure them, they might get a little bit flustered, and what you don't know, they might actually know, but they were too pressured to wind up hitting it anyway. Is it necessarily likely or even probable? No, it's not, admittedly. But, I mean, if you're trying to find an advantage where you literally have none by just randomly pressing a button, then you might as well take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. Some advantage beats no advantage. However, I talked about it confirming my HO. My HO was that there's not going to be that big of a gap in what we find with chasers. And that is very, very consistently the case. Most of them have very similar times. Most of them have very similar results. And we would expect this. Because I like to look at IQ in this example because it's probably it's not a great method, we're going to admit this, but it's probably the best method to measure intelligence at this point. So we're going to use it as a basis. We're also going to draw parallels to basketball player skills. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to call that like a sports IQ. Not like how well a player knows a given game, but as like a score relative to how well they play the game. So when we talk about IQ, of course the average is 90 to 109. Then every standard deviation I believe is 15. Um, so basically you want to go from there. And of course it is a Bell distribution. So you have 70% within 85 and 115. And that means how many fall within the one standard deviation. Two standard deviations is of course 15 times 2, so plus or minus 30, so 70 and 130 is your basis. And then 99.5% are between 60 and 140. And a genius level IQ by Mensa is considered to be a 100 or 140. Most of them only go up to that point. And of course, Richard Feynman's only a 125. I mean, a great mathematician, one of the best that's living of our time. But my point stands, though. If you have this small of a gap between chasers, right? Because we were expecting these people to be at least 3 standard deviations above. So if they're 4, it's probably not likely, but it could happen. They could be between 45 and 155. And again, as I mentioned, I'll be an asshole and I'll mention mine because it's relevant to what we're talking about here. As someone who's a 150 by this, that we would expect to see similar clusters of data of people who are in such a small portion of the population anyway. 145 is still going to be one in 100 people. But if we're talking about chasers who are probably I'd say probably 1 in 10,000, which is what I know 150 is, because I know mine and I always like to see how common that is. But if we're talking about that kind of population of people, when you expect similar performance across the board, you probably should have some exceptions, but again 145 is 1 in 1,000. As you start to get farther towards the right, you're starting to deal with smaller and smaller groups of people. And because they're all falling within that normative range, right, we're not going to see that much of a difference. Now, if we put Joe Schmo in that, if we put a bunch of Joe Schmoes as chasers who are within just the normative range, basically, in that around that 85 to 115 range, I mean, we're going to see probably something. Well, it depends how we skew that. We're probably going to see more variance in that respect. Here's why: it's 68%, but remember, if we're talking about a bell curve, because remember, it's a bell, and we split it down the middle at those points. There is 34.1% from 85 to 100, and 34.1 from 100 to 115. So, if you're taking 68% of the population, that's a pretty significant gap when you consider that it's really only 2% extra that are greater than 130. And because, again, the population is so homogeneous or the same, that we would expect to see similar bands within the data. It's kind of like brackets, right? So another comparison we can make beyond the sports one, because we're taking like Steph Curry's free shooting versus, say, a bench player like Giannis's brother from Dayton, who's the last round pick 2 years ago in the NBA draft. But we can also talk about tax brackets, right? Tax brackets are not directly comparable here, but they do involve brackets in terms of the fact that if you're going to be in this amount, then only a certain percentage will make that. And we would expect to see similarities against maybe like what these people do for a living. Granted, there are going to be some exceptions, like we would expect to see with chasers, but I think we would expect to see a lot of doctors, surgeons, and lawyers. We would see maybe some athletes in there as well. But again, it's not really any unexpectations. But if we take people who are near the average salary, right, we're going to see some teachers in there. We're going to see some general public works people. We're going to see some secretaries in there. And that really is going to explain why there's such a difference between that equivalent to the 85 to 115 population.
Yeah.
The data confirms what we think, because if we're dealing with populations that are very similar across an intelligence standardized test, even if it's a flawed one, again, for lack of one better, comment below if this makes sense to you, you have any questions, or if you can think of a better method to use. And yes, I know all IQ tests are not homogeneous. No, don't use the ones online. Use stuff like Stanford Binet. Or the WISC. The WISC is a tough one. But if you do that, you're going to see variations within the population, because 34.1% is bigger than 0.1% that's above 145.
And here's something
Why would we expect to see that big of a difference in population?
Right. Um, I look to bring up some of the more interesting stats that this person has.
Okay.
What I
Then
love is the
do them well.
accuracy, speed versus accuracy.
Yeah, and that's important too. We're going to talk about that, certainly how it applies to evaluating something like Jeopardy players, certainly, and it applies in chase players in a very different sense, especially as a chaser and as someone who has been a chaser before for a trivia event before, and it was very different how I would approach it to how I would as a player. So
Right. So what I also what he's also brought up is that sometimes the length of the questions depending on the country. Like for example, the Croatian version has the absolutely the longest questions. That's why your average seconds per question is 6.6 seconds. Whereas you take countries that might have shorter questions, like Israel, UK, Australia, and the US. All of them have times below 4.75 seconds. Well, the US has 4.79, but, little quibble there. But the average is 4.59 seconds. And then we get to the average chaser. You get your 4.59. But here, you've probably read the stat thing. Now, here's what I'm going to quiz you on, Jessica.
all right.
Between the UK chasers, who do you think has the best average speed?
The best average speed. Well, I would imagine it's not by Sean Wallace. Sean Wallace seems to be a little bit slower than most because he has to think, and his accuracy, relative to what I understand of standard deviations, is not ideal. Now, I would think, well, because Poston is pretty quick. I know Mark has done a 26 before a few times, and because we're dealing with averages of data, outliers are going to skew it. I wish there were some medians to compare with this, because if there's one flaw of this data, as good as it is, it's definitely that.
Right.
But I think I would pick Mark Lebet, and it would be very close with him and Haggerty and Haggerty, who I believe is second.
No, you're right. Lebet is first. Uh, Haggerty is 4.56. Jenny Ryan 4.60. You're right. Sean Wallace is slow at 4.61, but Paul Senna 4.48.
Okay. And you know what you wonder about here too is the age of the chaser, because Paul is definitely the youngest. Well, he's a lot younger than Mark and Ann, and that's part of it too.
And
It's why
Sean.
you don't see it. Yeah, Sean. Yeah, but definitely Sean. But I mean, the reaction time is something certainly to notice, because we talk about it when we talk about reactionary time with the signaling device on Jeopardy too.
By
It's
the
a fact
way,
that.
sorry to interrupt, but
Sorry.
talking about Sean Wallace, I found a clip of him on the UK version of Greed.
Oh, interesting.
His hair. Remember Coolio from back today? How he had that long, crazy hair.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I could imagine Sean having yeah,
That's
it's
what
kind of like
Sean
he had
had.
like a palm tree growing out of his head. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Uh, and seeing him back then on 2000 on Greed and on the Chase is just night and day.
I mean, I guess he doesn't have to wear a barrister's robe for that, so that kind of helps.
Unless you're Judge Rinder.
Yeah.
Uh, but here's the thing. You want to know who the fastest is
Overall,
internationally? Yeah.
internationally, no, I would love to hear this. Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, internationally, 4.11. Michal Sharon from Israel.
I'm gonna look up that name to check the age, because I see it in my list, and then I'm gonna test my HO Live guys. Is he young? Because he might be. I'm gonna guess he's mid 30s. Um, because that's like they don't really have chasers in their 20s, and so that gives me hope. Professional was earned a MSBC at Hebrew University of Jerusalem Spectrometry Society. So he's a biochemistry professor? Maybe, yeah, biochemistry professor, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, it looks like he's a professor, actually. Interesting.
Yep.
Let's see, if he's 96 graduate, right? So my thought is that she would have to be around, let's
Late
see,
30s.
if she got a BCS, right? So BCS is, of course, a Bachelor of Science, so she'd be
When
around
did he get it?
96, so 23 plus 23, yeah. So probably about actually like young 40s, which actually makes sense too when you consider, again, Mark and Ann are considerably older than that. And that's not a mark on them, obviously. It's just
Yeah.
human natural aging decline like that on guess functions like that. So it holds true possibly. I would have to run some tests on it. But I have a big hypothesis that a lot of that derives from age necessarily rather than skill. Again, we could run a lot of tests on that. It's not necessarily true, guys. It's just a hypothesis. Don't take that as a theory. But it makes sense. Like, again, why did Jeopardy have the seniors tournament for a while there? Because people's reactions get worse as they get older.
Mhm.
I don't know why that is, why it's part of evolutionary functions or not, or what's going on there. But it's a factor that is what it is when it applies to game shows. My guess is it's
Arthritis.
evolutionary to have kids take care of us and so forth because we've done our primary role. Again,
Yeah.
that's a hypothesis too. To not get too Goodallian on you.
All right. I'll say arthritis because I'm dealing with it in my shoulder.
Oh,
Okay. Uh, Now let's talk about accuracy for a second. We're just going to talk about the UK people because that's what we know best. Who is the most accurate? Who do you think is the most accurate?
accurate. I remember seeing a stat a few years ago about this that I believe that I would have to think that Paul Senna was very accurate. He didn't always have the best get rate in the final case, but he was really good overall. Because I have read about this before.
If this will allow me to scroll up. No, and but it's close.
Yeah, I have to say, and again, it's not a Mark, because again, he does a great job, but Mark more than any other chaser. Sean, you kind of expect it because of his relative get rates, but relative to his baseline, Mark is one I've noticed that you can derail kind of easily for whatever reason. It's something about his psyche. If his train falls off the rails, he falls off pretty hard. Contrastingly, if he gets hot, you can't stop him. And that's not to say he's a fluky player because you're dealing with such a high baseline, but he has, I think, the most variance of any chaser that you'll play, and that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. Which again, that's why we use something like standard deviations. So that's literally what that defines. So hang on, let me check this here. Give me a second here because I have something I want to look at for here.
Uh,
Um,
While you're doing that, Mark Lebet accuracy percentage 81% flat. Paulson at 82.08. Sean Wallace is the worst at 77.41%.
okay, so here we go. Okay, as as of December 2015, we're going to go back to game show theory because I mean, Dave, if we ever got in touch, I want to get in contact with you. Your site's really good, fellow stats person. Anyway, so here's the chaser's final performance of the final chases. Mark Lebet actually does not have the desired standard deviation. So Mark Lebet's average at that point was 150 of 195 for 76.9 win percentage, 22 average score, 4.5 standard deviation.
Mm-hmm.
Sean's was 4.8, Ann's was 4.3, Paul's was 3.9. So that kind of gives credence to that too. It's not to say you're a good player or a bad player because it doesn't necessarily even itself out. But I mean, Mark is prone to variance more than he really gets noticed for because it's not necessarily a good thing or not because standard deviation, in case we need the reminder, is a plus or minus. So again, we talked about that with the IQ too because beyond that 8.1%, we're talking about these 30% cases, he'll be at least 4 point off in either direction. So again, that's talking about within, I believe it's, okay, 13.6, and that would be, shit, why can I not do this faster? It's, 47, yeah, 47.7 times 2 would be equal to, yeah, 94.4, I believe. Yeah, so within those 94.4% of cases, he's going to be within that, essentially. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense that Sean would have the high variance as well, because we see when he's off, he's off. And of course, he catches people too. I mean, it just feels like because of selective memory, he doesn't. Again, that's not to knock Sean as a chaser, certainly. He's a freaking good quizzer.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we're just dealing with the best of the best here. Again, in a very small population. And when something is out of the norm, when someone of exceptional talent is not within the range of was not what's the right way to say this politely? And because he's a good chaser too, he really is. But when we see this compared to the baseline of relative others, then it sticks out to us because, and it's something that's always fascinated me too. Either way, about what when we see variance outside the norm. Like I've always liked to see the extremes of things, the highs and the lows of them. Like just because that's just it though, because let's say everything is about distribution, obviously it's not. We're going to have skewed data for any number of reasons. Like if we took the number of people who watched Fox News or MSNBC, then obviously their opinions on a given issue are going to be skewed a certain way because of how those channels draw those demographics.
Mm-hmm.
But the extremes are always interesting in that respect, and I've always wondered what makes them so. And Sean is kind of like that when he's off his game, and so is Mark for that matter. They're excellent players, but when you're prone to more variation than most, it makes you a particularly interesting case study, whether or not you're fast or not, which is a good metric in its own right, certainly.
Yeah, Sean is especially in that category because there's days where he's on, but then there's days he's just really, really off. Or as he called it, just a bad day at the office. Well
Yeah.
played.
Just another bad day at the office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, but that's a little sneak. That's a little peek into this wonderful stat pad. We'll
Yeah.
have a link.
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments about how you would interpret certain data or what I would do to analyze it, let us know in the comments below. I would love to hear your questions and what your findings are, even because data is nothing without reciprocation. Like you look at the Boston Sloan Sports Analytic Conference that's around here that's been going on the past 10 years or so. We have data, but we need to share with one another so we can help educate others and we can help teach one another as well. Whether those other individuals have the curiosity, we're too afraid to ask, or maybe just want to learn it themselves. It's good for us as a community. Please.
Absolutely.
Helps us as a channel, helps you as your brain, and it'll help as much as it does you.